It's been said that luck is the intersection of preparation and opportunity. Welcome to the Australian Hunting Backcountry podcast, where we will focus on all things hunting in the backcountry, not just in Australia, but everywhere that backcountry hunting is possible. My name is Tobias, and if you're a hunter with no backpacking experience, or even an expert, I would like you to join me as we explore gear, places, and technologies, hear lived experiences, different perspectives, and share the passion that people have for a hard-earned backpack hunt. I appreciate you being here with me as I try to increase the knowledge that will bring us better luck in the backcountry. The Australian Hunting Backcountry podcast is proud to welcome two new partnerships for 2024. Skeleton Optics Australia and On Track Meals are now both sponsors of the show. Skeleton Optics Australia is a family-run Australian-based business offering premium high-performance and durable sunglasses for active outdoor users. Skeleton Optics sunglasses use polarized Zeiss lenses and feature frames designed with lightweight and impact-resistant materials that provide a secure and comfortable fit. I personally now use Skeleton Optics sunglasses and would encourage you to reach out to Chris and Daniela if you would like further information on what glasses might suit you best. On-Track Meals are made in Brisbane and is a 100% Australian and veteran-owned business. On-Track Meals pride themselves on producing high-quality, shelf-stable, healthy, real food designed to be taken with you on your next adventure. Because the meals are not dehydrated or freeze-dried, they have retained all the flavour, don't require any water to be added, simply heat and eat, or they can even be eaten cold. They have a broad selection of meals with many more being planned and cater for some allergies and diet options. The coconut ginger chicken is now my new favourite, and On-Track Meals will be accompanying me on many future adventures. Okay, welcome to the Australian Hunting Backcountry, and I'd like to welcome my guest, Reiny from the Satphone Shop. Reiny, good morning. Thank you for coming on board to the podcast.
Thank you, Tobias, and good morning to you, and certainly looking forward to it. Thank you.
Yeah. So, Reiny, this episode we want to talk about technology for backcountry communication and safety, and the Satphone Shop was an obvious choice for me to go to as a resource. Now, you guys were also at the Wild Deer Hunting and Outdoors Expo that was in Warragul, Victoria, almost 12 months ago, actually, last year. And so I did stop by, had a bit of a look at some of the gear you had on display there. Managed to arrange finally to get around to catching up with you to do this recording.
And we're also attending the upcoming SHOT Show that's coming up in October this year at the Melbourne Showgrounds. So we'll be there as well to support our hunting fraternity for all their needs.
Yeah. I'm hoping to get down for that one as well. So yeah, that'll be a good one too. I know I've introduced you already, but we can backpedal a bit on that and just get you to introduce yourself. Tell us about your role, the Satphone Shop, and then delve into a bit of your experience and background and so forth in this field. Yep.
Okay, so as Tobias said, my name's Reiny. My last name's Gajewski, so Reiny Gajewski.
I wasn't going to try and pronounce that Reiny in case I got that wrong. So
it is a tough one.
I'll let you do that. Yeah.
It bamboozles most people, so I've heard just about every connotation you can imagine of that one.
Yep.
But so my role at Satphone Shop is, Satphone Shop, just to give you a little bit of background, is a subsidiary of Beam Communications, which is a publicly listed company here in Australia. And my role within Beam is Vice President of Sales. So I not only look after sales within the Beam Communications, but also our subsidiary company being Satphone Shop, which is an online store. I also oversee the managing and sales for that. My experience, I I've been around for a little while, but within the relevant fields, I've been in the communication industries for over 30 years. I've worked with every major telco, so I've done some time with Voda and Optus. I've also worked for Telstra. I spent 3 years with Telstra when they launched Telstra Mobile Satellite, which is Telstra's version of reselling the Iridium satellite network. So I was the product manager to launch that within Telstra quite a few years ago. And after leaving Telstra, I joined Beam Communications, and I've been with Beam Communications for just on 18 years. My 18-year anniversary just comes up in a couple of weeks. And Beam Communications has been around for over 20 years. And we specialise in the design and manufacture of satellite-based communication equipment. So we have our own in-house engineers, both software and hardware, and we manufacture equipment for the Iridium satellite network and the Inmarsat network, and we've also done some products for the Thuraya satellite network.
Right. Okay. So definitely a wealth of experience there for us to pull on. And so Beam Communications manufactures and produces their own products sort of in competition for the worldwide market.
Yep. So for the Iridium and the Inmarsat networks, one of our key products are docking stations. So when you look at a satellite phone, they're obviously an all-in-one unit. They're a great unit, but there's many applications, typically small amount for the consumer market, but mainly for industry and government, where they want to extend the usage of their satellite phone. And that's typically done for vehicles where they want to be able to have a docking unit, like we remember with our mobile phones before they had Bluetooth and Apple Play and Android Play and all that. We had the old Nokias, and you had the little cradle which gave you the external speaker and mic, so our boys in blue didn't give you a ticket for using your mobile phone while driving. We do that same sort of technology, but for satellite phones. So we do it for all the two models of Iridium, being the 9555 and the 9575, and we also do those for the Inmarsat iSatphone 2. So that's probably our largest product range, is the docking units there. We do a little bit of business within Australia. Telstra resell most of our docking stations on the Iridium network, but most of our business is actually international. So we have an office based in the US and also in the UK, and we have global resellers. So we don't, Beam as such doesn't sell direct to end users. We sell through specialised satellite resellers. Most of the major ones around the world sell our products. So we mass produce them and then sell them on to our resellers that then have specialist sales forces that then sell them on to their customers, whether they be consumer, corporate, government, whatever the case may be. And then we also manufacture some more specialised products, things like our friends Bureau Met, where they've got remote telemetry units where they have remote devices out in the middle of nowhere that measure rainfall and temperatures and things like that. So we have specialised small data devices that then transmit that data back over the Iridium satellite network. So we do some specialised things as well.
Right. Okay. So in terms of the products that you have available that are going to be suitable for the topic of the podcast, just give us an overview of what the Satphone has on offer there.
Yep. So Satphone Shop, I'll just give you a bit of background on Satphone Shop and how that came about. Satphone Shop's been operating now as an online store for over 11 years. And when Telstra launched Telstra Mobile Satellite, they obviously had the product in their Telstra stores, but the Telstra stores were really had difficulty selling satellite because they were very good at selling the mobiles. And Telstra approached Beam back then and said, because we have a very long-standing relationship with Telstra, and said, could you guys set up something that we could refer our customers through to you, because you guys are the specialist in satellite. So we developed what back then was a very basic website, and it was just the three models of satellite phone that Telstra sold back then. And over that journey, obviously, Satphone Shop has grown from strength to strength. we're Telstra's largest and preferred satellite dealer. So if you actually call Telstra for a satellite phone, they'll actually refer you through to us. And over that journey, over the 11 years, obviously our satellite business has grown year on year. And in listening to our customers, our range of products that we offer nowadays is a lot more than just the satellite phone. So what we try to do is really encompass all your remote communication needs and accessories. And, one of our taglines is your one-stop shop. Mm-hmm. So in the satellite space, we offer the Iridium and the Inmarsat satellite phones. So we have all three models of Iridium, or four models, I should say now. So we have the Iridium Go, which is a little bit of a different device. So that works with your smartphone. Mm-hmm. Basically turns your smartphone into a satellite phone, makes it a little bit easier to use for your contacts and your messaging. We then have the Iridium 9555, which is your basic talk and text. You then go up to the 9575, which is a little bit more ruggedized, and then also incorporates your SOS facility, which is a very popular function that people are looking for nowadays, that in the event of an emergency, who do you call, what numbers do you dial? You're obviously stressed because it's an emergency situation. So, many of our devices nowadays have what they call an SOS button inbuilt to it. So you don't have to worry about who you call. You just press that button, and depending on your device, it automatically contacts emergency services, gives them your GPS location. So again, depending on your device, you're either talking to them or you're getting messages back from them in less than 2 minutes. So in a lot of respects, they're actually even faster than your traditional PLBs or personal locating beacons. Mm-hmm. And then the top of the range from Iridium is the Go Exec, which is basically like your normal Go, but just a little bit bigger, gives you 2 dedicated voice lines, and then also gives you access to some light web browsing. So to be able to do some decent emails, send some pictures and things like that over the Iridium network. And then we also have the Inmarsat Satphone 2, which is a very, very nice device. Also has your SOS facility inbuilt to it, and comes with a nice full colour screen. So we have the 5 different models in the satellite phone market. We also do, as I mentioned, we've increased our range. So we also do the GME PLB, personal locating beacon. So that's probably your entry point into the satellite space, where you don't necessarily want to communicate with anybody, but you just want that peace of mind that if something does go pear-shaped, you do have that facility to be able to at least send an emergency message with your GPS location. And the PLBs are, quite cost effective, and there's no ongoings, which is why a lot of people like the PLBs. So once you register them with the Australian government, there's no ongoing fees, and the battery life of the GME is 7 years. Mm-hmm. So as long as you remember to take that with you, you've always got that peace of mind that if something does go terrible, you got that emergency button you can press, sit down and wait, and then somebody will come and get you. And then you've got the interim between a PLB and a satellite phone, which is probably a newer market that's really grown in the last 4 to 5 years, and that's your satellite messengers, which are very, very popular. Mainly, again, because they're much lower cost. Typical satellite messenger is anywhere between about that $350 to $500 mark. Mm. Satellite phones start at around about the $1,500 mark, up to about $2,000. So the satellite messengers typically will do everything a satellite phone will do except an actual voice call. So it's all about, what most of us do nowadays anyway on our smartphones. We don't tend to talk to many people nowadays. Yep. And we just message them. And that's what the satellite messengers do very well. It gives you that ability to send and receive messages to family and friends, and then also incorporate things like tracking. People can see where you are. They can follow your map if you've been travelling around Australia, so they can see all the places you've been. And again, the satellite messages also incorporate that SOS facility. And the most popular one that we sell is the Zoleo, which probably a lot of your listeners too are familiar with, because that's won many local and international awards, and certainly been very, very popular in the Australian market.
Yep. And then moving, I guess the next sort of level from there up is where you start delving into military and government grade equipment.
Yeah, so that's obviously getting more specialised, and a lot of the military and government equipment is very sales restricted. So it's only available to key federal governments. A lot of state governments don't even have access to them,
Mm.
and most of them, like for our Defence Department, our Australian Army, Navy, etc., and our federal police, all their equipment works on a specialized gateway out of Hawaii. So for the American DoD, Department of Defense, all their traffic is separate to all the commercial traffic for normal corporates, consumers that are using their satellite phones. Their gateway, for example, for Iridium, is all out of Tempe in Arizona, whereas all the defence equipment, it all runs out of a gateway out of Hawaii. So those two traffics are very, very different and routed through separate gateways. But that's all very, very specialised. And
Mm.
the price of the military stuff, because it also covers much higher encryptions and things like that, gets very, very expensive. I know of military terminals that we see at various shows or whatever that start like $80,000, $90,000. That's
Yeah.
small, portable, that a soldier can basically carry with them. But yeah, very specialised and very expensive.
Yeah. Okay. Well, definitely out of my budget. And then get the other end of the spectrum too. When I was in Scouts many years ago, and even early days of when I started sort of hunting and backpack hunting, you had to, or you used to carry things. Well, back in the days when we didn't have GPSs, you had a map and a compass. But we would always have to carry, a signal mirror,
Yep.
and learn the basics of Morse code, or you'd carry a little sheet with you that had the Morse code alphabet on it and that sort of thing. And even whistles and, very sort of basic technology from that. And now here we are, where I can now text my children from anywhere in Australia, essentially anywhere in the world, essentially. So it's just amazing to think about the advancements that have only occurred in my lifetime, um, let alone what's going to happen in the next 10, 20 years or so.
Oh, absolutely. And I mean, those things like the signal mirror, some type of flare or bright light, the whistles are still really important, because as much as most devices nowadays have GPS, depending on your location, that may be within 10 to 15 meters, it may be 100 or 200 meters, and if you're in thick bush in a mountain range and things like that, then having the ability to also make some type of noise or light or whatever, so somebody can find you quicker, those types of very inexpensive, small, lightweight things should never be discounted. That even if you've got, a PLB, a satellite phone, a messenger, whatever the case may be, there's still a place for those very simple things, very cost effective, and can still make the difference in, half an hour being able to find you quicker by, just something like a whistle or a light,
Yeah.
If you're in dense bush.
Yeah.
And certainly, the satellite industry in my time, when I first started in satellite was when Iridium launched back in 1998. And, I was working for Iridium South Pacific, and that was all part of the Motorola brand.
Mm-hmm.
And, to tell you a little bit of a funny story, how did Iridium all come to about? And this is actually a true story. So a executive was holidaying on a lovely tropical island somewhere with his wife, and his wife, obviously Motorola back then were very big into your analog, and digital was just starting to make traction. Being able to call people, being away from your home phone and things like that. And she said, why can't we have a phone that'll work anywhere in the world? And in all honesty, from that little comment, the executive went back and Motorola, all the engineers and everything got together and came up with the whole concept of Iridium Satellite being a global network of 66 satellites that provide 100% coverage all over the Earth's globe. back then. Launched commercially in 98, but they started launching satellites back in 95. And back in 95, $6 billion was a lot of money. Much more than 6 billion is nowadays. It's, 6 billion nowadays seems to be chump money. But back then it was a massive undertaking from Motorola and a few other investors that obviously came in along the way. And that was really groundbreaking back then, to have one phone that would work anywhere in the world. And from Iridium, then we saw many other companies start up. We saw Globalstar come out, also try to replicate a low Earth orbit satellite network, and we've had a few others attempted it along the way. We even had Bill Gates come out quite a few years ago and was going to launch 200 satellites, but that didn't work. And now we've got obviously a big one in Starlink. Through Elon Musk, who's got a very large satellite network. This is more on the data space though, rather than the communications. And we've also got Amazon's OneWeb being developed now as well. So absolutely agree. The change in the market has been astronomical, and the next 5 to 10 years is really going to change it. For communication in general, we'll never be able to say we're out of communication anymore.
yeah, that's right. Yeah, it's I lose that excuse then, don't I, when I say to people, "Oh, sorry, I was out of mobile range." I remember the first GPS unit I bought. I think it was a Magellan unit, and it was like a paver basically. No rechargeable batteries, so you had to put I think 6 or 8 AA batteries in it, and it had a run time of about 17 minutes on those batteries, so you had to be prepared to carry a whole heap more batteries with you, or turn it on and turn it off when you needed it. But why I was sort of referring to the military technology, the current military technology, is because back then the GPS ran off the US military satellites, and the military wouldn't release basically the civilian version, the civilian access that they released to their satellites. They intentionally released it with a plus or minus 100 meter accuracy, because they saw it as a potential threat for people to have exacting GPS technology. So I tested it, and I'd walk out the front of my house, turn it on, and again you had to have an open view of the sky. If the foliage cover above was too thick, it wouldn't work. So you had to have a nice open view, and you would turn it on and stand there and wait, and you would watch the satellites on the screen, and it was have to lock onto one, then it'd try and lock onto another one, then it'd lose access to this one and try and find another one, and eventually you'd get 3 satellites, and then boom, it'd triangulate and you could plot your position. So I'd stand there, lock the position in, mark the waypoint, turn it off, come back out another day, turn it back on, lock it in, and it would tell me that my position, was down the road, even though I'm standing in exactly the same spot. So obviously over time the technology and the accuracy has increased, and I think they can get it down to now plus or minus 3 meters, or probably even less now, but the last thing I read was about 3 meters. So the military technology, that $80,000-$90,000 technology now, in however many years will potentially be, there'll be a civilian version of that's much more accessible and cost effective for everyday users. Yeah,
and you see that in many industries where the technology is only there for military, but it works well and it's developed, and then it's moved on to the consumer and the corporate market. Many of the technologies that originally Iridium released purely for the US DoD have since rolled into commercial applications for consumer and corporates, like push to talk. So that's basically where your satellite phone becomes like your traditional two-way radio, where it's push-to-talk type facility. Now, that was originally engineered and developed purely for the American Defense Department. But after about 5 years of that, Iridium then moved that to their Tempe gateway and made that available. And that's something that, from the beam side of it, we've seen a massive growth in, where you've got that ability to one to many, many to one, because obviously a traditional satellite phone is a one-to-one link, so you can only ever talk to one person at a time. It's really about corporates. It's not really for the consumer market, but for smaller companies and larger companies, the PTT facility, people like your forestry, your firefighters, things like that, where they're in remote, there's no access to any form of mobile. Radio is great, but it obviously has its limitations, whereas the satellite, because you've got the one global network, you can basically have a talk group where you've got people in, Tempe, Arizona, you could have some in Perth, you could have some in Brazil, and they're all talking on the same talk group via the, many to one, one to many type facility. So that's a great example of, where it was for military, but it's since been carried through for the consumer/corporate market.
So the satellite phones, you're able to call any phone number, any connected phone number, whether it's a landline, mobile phone, or another sat phone in the world, essentially.
Yeah. So any normal, what we call a full national number or an FNN, you can dial off a satellite phone. So that's a standard mobile number. So your standard 04 number. And you're basically always making a call like you're making an international call. So any standard mobile or any home phone, depending on the type of service that you have with your SIM card. So, for example, with Telstra do it a little bit differently. So they've integrated the Iridium satellite network with their own mobile network. So when you activate a traditional satellite phone, you'll get a full 15-digit satellite number. For Iridium, for example, you'll get a prefixed 8816 number. That means you can only dial a mobile or a standard home phone number. You don't have access to dial 13, 1300 or 1800 numbers. So any specialty numbers you cannot dial. So, but if you were to have a service with Telstra, rather than getting an international 8816 number, you get an 01471 prefix number. And then that actually does give you the ability to dial a 13, 1300 or 1800 number. So that, because they've integrated it with their own mobile network, it gives you that ability. So it's horses for courses, and that's where at Satphone Shop we really talk to our customers to find out what the best option is for them. And there's, advantages and disadvantages in both of them. So it's about which one's going to best suit it. But yeah, you can basically call anybody.
Right. Okay. And the satellite messengers, the Garmin, Zoleo, that sort of thing. Your limitation with those, whilst it's text and not talk, the limitation is that you have to have mobile phone numbers connected in your contact list already. So, or be able to dial one, essentially. So you can't send a text to a sat phone or a landline, can you? It has to be to a mobile phone.
Correct. You definitely can't send any messages to a landline. That's across any device. The messengers typically all work on an app on your smartphone, whether it be Apple or Android, and I'll just talk about the Zoleo. So when you load the Zoleo app, it'll actually, one of the first questions it'll ask you when you load the app is, can I have access to your contacts? So the Zoleo app, and Garmin works basically the same, will load all your contacts into the app. So when you go to message somebody, you'll have your same contacts that you can scroll through that obviously have mobile numbers attached to them. And you can just select whoever that you want to talk to. Zoleo also does give you the ability to send an email. So, if you've got email-only contacts, you can do an email up to 200 characters. No attachments, of course. Again, it's all purely text-based. And then you also have, because the Zolio app is free to download, if you're traveling, for example, if I'm traveling and I've got my Zolio, when I did travel last year, I got my wife to also download the Zolio app, and then you can do an app-to-app message. And the advantage of that is your typical SMS is obviously restricted to 160 characters. But if you're messaging somebody that also has the Zolio app, you can do up to 950 characters in a message. So rather than doing those stop-start, forward and backward messages, you can give, one good message, had a fantastic day today, did this, did that, the weather's been this, rada, rada, rada. So you can get up to 950 characters all in one message. And that's, also from a cost perspective, rather than 3 or 4 SMSs, that's being deducted from your included messages or you're paying extra for them. The app to app is 950 characters, and that only counts as one message in your included messages, or if you've used those up, your additional cost of one message. So that's certainly a good advantage.
Yeah. Okay. So was she using a Zolio at her end, or just through the internet, so the Wi-Fi or internet, or data of the phone?
Yeah, no, she was just using her smartphone. So she's on Apple.
Yeah.
So she was just using her Apple phone, and whether that be connected to mobile or Wi-Fi.
Okay.
And, she just downloads the Zolio app. As I mentioned, it's free to download. And, when I message her, just like if you're using Messenger or WhatsApp, when a message comes through on that, if you're on mobile or Wi-Fi, it'll give you the same sort of message indicator waiting that your normal SMS does. And then she can just open the app and there will be my message, and she can just reply to me straight off the app. So it's a very, very simple to use, and I suppose that's one of the key things why I think the whole satellite messenger market has really taken off very, very largely is it's very, very simple to use. And at Satphone Shop, we have a broad range of customers, but we've also built a very good clientele with our grey nomads that are traditionally a little bit wary of technology, and they certainly have no issues with the Zolio or the satellite phones in general, because they are traditionally very, very simple to use. So a typical satellite phone is nowhere near like your smartphone. They don't have apps, they don't play games, they don't have cameras. They basically just allow you to make and receive calls and send and receive text messages. So, satellite phones really aren't anywhere near the same level as your smartphone in regards to their technology. It's all about, horses for courses. You don't need to play games when you're buying a satellite phone. A satellite phone's all about, keeping in touch with family and friends, having that peace of mind that, if it's an emergency, you've got the SOS inbuilt, or even if it's not an emergency, you've just broken down, you need to get in touch with somebody, or you want to book your next campsite, or, you want to get in touch with somebody, that's where they come in. It's all about being able to talk or text with anybody, basically anywhere.
Yeah. All right. So if you wanted to communicate with someone on the satellite messenger, say, for example, somebody gives you their business card. I put it in my pocket, go into the backcountry and realise I need to communicate with this person, and I haven't entered their phone number into my contacts, but I've got it on their business card. Do you have the ability then to send a text to that number by programming it in, or do they need to be in your contacts?
Nope, you can just program that in. So, you've got your contacts, but, if you meet somebody along the way, you might have somebody, going to a spot where, you've got a few hunters. In Victoria, we're obviously still legal to have the duck hunting. So you might meet somebody else as well that, may even have a Zolio, and, you want to keep in touch where you are and, what the two of you are doing. So you obviously haven't met them before, so they're not in your contacts. And it's very easy just to manually enter that number in. And then, once you've sent a message, then you've got that record, and then you can always go back to that message trail and, add a new message or receive a new message, whatever the case may be. So you're certainly not locked out on being able to add anybody new on the go, even in, remote parts where you don't have access to any mobile or Wi-Fi.
Yeah. I had a excuse me. I had a Spot years ago when they first came out, and that was one of the restrictions with that, is that you had to program in the numbers via the website before you go via your Spot account before you went off grid. So then you could only send text messages to that list, and it all had to be programmed in and pre-formatted as well. So I'd type in, like, when I wanted to message my kids, I would, the message would be something like, hi, this is where I am today, love from Dad, sort of thing. And I hit the button on the Spot and it would send that pre-formatted message. They would get it on their phones and be able to then, hit the link and see where I am on a map. So then, I think it was the DeLorme InReach. They first came out with that technology, and Garmin essentially bought that company out and bought that technology out. So being able to change it up a bit and so forth, and that was life changing for me, because then you could, like you said, you could message different people, you could message ahead. If you were running late or something or other, you don't want people to worry. So you just, don't expect me by the time I said I was going to be home. Everything's okay, don't panic or anything. That certainly changed that interface. Now, we spoke before, I know we joked about it, but really I'm not joking when we talked about the basic contingencies like signal mirrors, whistles, the having that sort of analog backup plan is still necessary for people going into remote locations, because there are limitations to the technology. As great as it is, it's very reliant on many things. One being battery power, the other one being obviously access to the satellites and so forth. And thirdly, not being damaged or waterlogged or something like that, which can also happen. So with the SAT messages and the SAT phones, what are some of the limitations to those in terms of, being able to be used, like you spoke about before? You might be down might have fallen down a deep gully or something, crevice or something like that. And are there any country-specific limitations to either of those as well?
Yep. So the most important thing is, what we always tell our customers is satellite requires one thing always, and that's a direct line of sight between the device and the satellite. So it's not like a mobile network. It can't go through walls or through cars or anything like that. It needs that direct line of sight. So this is where the different satellite networks come into play. So, for example, Iridium, they use what they call low Earth orbiting. So they have 66 satellites which orbit around about 800 kilometres above the Earth's surface. So that's what calls them low Earth orbiting. And those satellites are moving all the time. So they're not like a traditional stationary satellite. So, an average Iridium satellite will go from horizon to horizon in about 15 minutes. So they're actually very high-speed moving satellites. But because there's 66 of them, at any point in time, you'll have access to one or up to three Iridium satellites in your field of view. So you do need that line of sight. Now, with other networks, like if you look at Inmarsat or Thuraya, they use what they call geostationary satellites. Now, these are much, much bigger satellites, and these sit roughly around about 30 to 34,000 kilometres out in space. And they actually don't move. They have a set position, and if you shine a torch on a basketball, it will illuminate a certain part of that surface of the basketball. And that's really what a geostationary does. And as you turn that basketball around, that satellite or that torch tracks exactly the same. So the footprint never varies. Okay, so the footprint, or where you can make that call, is always the same. So you've got your LEOs and your GEOs. There's also medium Earth orbiting, but there's not much in the consumer space that operate in that, what they call the MEO or the medium Earth orbiting. Now, the advantages and disadvantages of both, the geostationary, because it has to travel so far, you do get a lot of lag or time delay. So if you're using a satellite phone like the Inmarsat, you can typically have up to 2 seconds delay. So, if you're using an Inmarsat, we might actually recommend to our customers that when you finish talking, use the word over. So that way the other person knows you're finished talking, so then they'll start talking. With the Iridium or the low Earth orbiting, that delay is around about 400 to 500 milliseconds. So it's virtually no delay whatsoever. With the GEOs, if you're standing somewhere and you've got coverage, so you're able to have that line of sight between your phone and the satellite, you'll always have connection at that spot, because nothing ever changes unless obviously somebody was to put up a huge building and block out that line of sight. But traditionally, it'll always work in that site. If you're in your scenario with a gully, then that's where you're going to struggle with a geostationary, because if that orientation of that gully doesn't have a direct line of sight with the satellite, you're never going to make connection. So it'll be up to you to have the ability to climb out of that gully, to get to higher ground, to make that line of sight with the satellite to get your call out, whatever the case may be. With Iridium, because the satellites are moving and because they're low Earth orbiting, and there are 66 of them, then there's been many, many documented cases of people being saved in gullies. And there's one that particularly I love of an ex-army lady that was doing some trekking in Antarctica, who actually fell down an ice crevice. So we're talking, a maximum 2 meter window, and she was down probably 6-7 meters down this ice crevice, and basically hanging on for dear life. And all she could see below her was darkness. And she managed to grab her backpack, pull out her Iridium satellite phone, and was extremely lucky that there was a satellite directly overhead, even though she only had that 2 meter gap up to the sky, and managed to get a call out and was rescued. And that's, you can go to the Iridium website and see Saved by Iridium. And that's a great example of the Iridium network, that even if you were in a gully and you didn't have coverage right there and then, eventually there's going to be a time where there will be a satellite overhead, because as I said, they're always moving. That's going to give you the ability to all of a sudden see, whoop, I've got some signal now, get out an emergency message or make an emergency phone call. So that's the difference. But all the satellite networks always need that direct line of sight. And that's right up to your Foxtel satellites, why they have to figure out where to put it on your roof. So you've always got that look angle to see that direct line of sight. So, around cities and things like that, satellite phones don't work, because, if you go into a major city, you're surrounded by tall buildings, you're never really going to get a signal, because you're always being shadowed by those buildings, or when you're out back, those mountains. And that's the difference. So you definitely do need that line of sight. So there is no 100% guaranteed. And that's where, I'll go back to your signal mirrors and things like that. They're still very worthwhile to carry, and we would certainly recommend you carry those things as well, because, every satellite technology, does have its limitations.
Yeah. Welcome to Australian Hunting Backcountry. In this segment, I want to step outside the usual friends of the podcast and take the opportunity to talk about something a bit different, yet incredibly important and an issue close to my heart. As you may know, June is Men's Mental Health Month, and I feel it's crucial to highlight this topic, not just for the men in our community, but for everyone. I want to be clear though, everyone's mental health is important. Whether you're a man or woman, young or old, we all face challenges that can affect our mental well-being, and I need you to know that it's okay to seek help, talk about it, and support one another. But why I want to highlight men's mental health is because the facts are that suicide continues to be the leading killer of Australian men under the age of 55. Not heart disease, not prostate cancer. A man's own hand is his greatest health risk. According to the Australian Bureau of Statistics, in 2020, men made up 3/4 of deaths by suicide. The heartbreaking reality is every day we lose about 7 men to suicide, and most of all, young Australian men in blue-collar trades are twice as likely to die by suicide than peers in other occupations. The reasons people take their own life are complex, and often there is no single reason why a person attempts or dies by suicide. Although there may be common threads between them, the reasons are as individual as the person themselves. But whatever the reasons, these people are our fathers, sons, brothers, mates, and fellow hunters. We cannot deny that a major causality is men are often reluctant to seek help. A survey by Beyond Blue found that only 13% of young men aged 16 to 24 who experienced a mental health problem actually sought professional help. Many times, societal expectations of being tough and self-reliant keep men from admitting they need support. The old adage of boys don't cry is literally killing us because we are often stoic to making any admission that we need help. So, what can we do? For starters, we need to break down the stigma surrounding men's mental health. Open conversations are essential. Let's normalise talking about mental health in our hunting circles, around the campfire, in workplaces and beyond. Campaigns like Beyond Blue's Man Therapy, the Are You OK Days, and Movember initiatives are great tools to help get these conversations started, but don't wait for a special day to check in with someone, and be prepared to scratch past the masking and the superficial responses. Workplaces too can play a significant role. A lot of employers promote mental well-being by providing resources, training and a supportive culture. If you're running a small business or part of a larger organisation, think about how you can make mental health a priority. Access to mental health services is another critically important area. There are services out there who want to talk you through what you're up against and who don't need you to identify yourself if you don't feel you want to. It's well recognised that a significant barrier for firearm owners in seeking psychological support is the concern around loss of their firearms, but it is very possible and extremely critical to find a service to assist you. I know that legislation and policy seems to punish a firearm owner for seeking mental health help, but when you consider that a significant majority of people who attempt suicide by means other than a firearm make a recovery and go on to lead fulfilling lives. It is an unfortunate statistic that suicide by firearm is 99.9% successful. I agree that licensing policies need to be changed so they do not discriminate against those seeking help, but to be blunt, it's more important for you to be alive. I should also highlight that temporary loss of your firearms is not the end of it. It is possible to recover and have them returned so you can continue with the sports that you love, but again, this starts with getting help. So as we navigate through Men's Mental Health Month, let's commit to making a difference. Let's support each other and create a community where talking about mental health is as normal as sharing hunting stories. You don't have to be in a crisis to talk about your mental health either. Share the things that are concerning you as often as possible so little things don't compound on one another. I want to encourage you all to continue these behaviours outside of June and inspire you to reach out to people any time of the year and just ask some questions. Personal connection is a powerful tool. Check in on your mates, your hunting buddies, your family. Sometimes a simple conversation can be a lifeline for a man struggling in silence. For the men listening, the two most important but possibly the hardest steps you must take are, firstly, admitting to yourself that you could do with some help. There is no shame in this. You have not failed. You are human, and how you feel is a reasonable response to what has been happening. And then, your second step, reaching out to ask for help. Just remember that every storm runs out of rain, and if I can do anything to help any one of you, please just reach out. Thank you for tuning in to Australian Hunting Backcountry. Take care of yourselves and each other, both out in the backcountry and in everyday life. With the low Earth, the Iridium network, are they moving in all different planes around the Earth, or are they just basically moving sort of around the equator?
No, they're moving in, what is it? I think there's 7 orbitable planes or 6 orbital planes, I should say, with 11 satellites in each plane. And they're spinning around counterclockwise to how the Earth is spinning. And you're basically, rather than a lot of satellite networks, like the Starlink, will tend to gather around the equator. The Iridium network, because of the way that they orbit the Earth, they actually congregate at the North and the South poles. So that's where most of the satellites will converge, and they actually have to switch a lot of the satellites off when they're over it because they could just get too congested, and there's obviously not too many people living in the North and the South poles. But because of that network, they're still today the only satellite network that can make the statement of 100% global coverage.
Yep. Yeah. Okay. So sometimes at night you see the satellites moving, not east-west, they're going a different direction. And
you'll mainly see today, most of the satellites that you'll see if you're looking up in the sky at the night sky will be the Starlink satellites. So most of those are still quite reflective and will bounce the light back to Earth. The first round of Iridium, so Iridium, as I mentioned, launched back in 98, and their satellites were designed to last about 15, 18 years. So in 2017, Iridium commenced the changing the satellite network. So they commenced with SpaceX. So Iridium were one of the first to sign up to SpaceX in launching their rockets, which was a lot of the industry and other satellite carriers thought that was going to be a big failure because back then SpaceX wasn't a proven technology to launch satellites, and launching satellites is a very, very expensive process. And, if they blow up on the launch pad, there's been many satellite companies that's basically folded from that, haven't been able to recover from losing a satellite on a launch pad. So when Iridium started launching what they call their next generation, so all the original 66 satellites have all been burnt up in the atmosphere and replaced by 66 new ones, and they actually have 12 spares. So apart from their 66 operational, they have 12 spares up there that in the event that if a satellite fails, they can actually move another satellite into its place quite quickly. And in the whole first, in my history with Iridium, they've only ever lost one satellite. And that was a bit of space junk hit one of their satellites. So, but it is a real thing nowadays with the amount of satellites that are up there, with particularly Starlink. Starlink's got over 5,000 satellites up there now. So the last count, I think there's over 10,000 satellites flying around the Earth. So it is starting to get, as big as space is, it is starting to get quite crowded up there.
Yeah. Apparently there's quite a lot of space junk and debris up there as well, still floating around. Yep. So I remember watching a program, and they talked about having the complications, the mathematics and so forth that's involved in a launch and then re-entry, and a lot of it was just avoiding where the space junk was going to be at that particular time and so forth. So that's why it literally comes down to tenth of a second to hit the button at the right time, that sort of thing. So
yeah, well, you've got Global Star, Iridium that operate low Earth orbiting, and they have set orbitable planes, and the satellites are in the distance apart, so they're very predictable as far as where they'll be. Whereas if you there's a good little website, you can actually see a map of the Starlink satellites, and if you have a look at that, with their thousands of satellites, there's no real rhyme or reason in regards to the way that these satellites move around. There's no orbitable planes or patterns or anything. It just seems to be, 1 minute in Australia you'll have 6 or 7 satellites, and then you might have 3 in a group over here. And that's where, in some of the research that I've done with Starlink, they've had to do, I think in 2023, last year, they had to do something like hundreds or 1,000 emergency maneuvers, where they had to, last minute move their satellite, stop it from hitting another satellite or a piece of space junk or whatever. So moving forward, yes, that's going to be a real challenge for all the satellite providers as they launch more satellites, and as OneWeb gets up there, and they're talking about other satellite providers also launching. It is going to become a major issue, and that risk of not only space junk but two satellites colliding with each other.
I wouldn't like to be filling out the insurance paperwork for that one and trying to decide who was at fault.
No, would not be fun at all. And yeah, I think, yeah, would not be a fun job. And this is where, maintaining a satellite network is also a very, very expensive proposition. So, all the satellite networks have, obviously ground operation centers that monitor the satellites 24/7. So, monitoring where they are, where all the other space satellites are, where all the other space junk is. So, it is a very, very key job for all the carriers to just monitor their network. So something the likes of Telstra, Optus and Voda don't have to worry about once they put a tower up, as long as a plane doesn't hit it, it's going to be fine. But this is where, people go, they like the fact of being able to communicate everywhere, but a lot of people go, why is satellite so expensive? And it really is about that, because it's such a high risk and expensive proposition. It's not only building the satellites, they have a limited lifespan. A geostationary satellite has a longer lifespan. They'll last about 20 to 25 years. The LEOs typically last around about that 15 to 18 years. Some of the Starlink satellites only have a life of 5 years. So you've got the cost of building the satellite. You've also got the massive cost of putting it on a rocket. Is that rocket going to launch correctly? Are they going to be able to dispatch from that rocket correctly? Are they going to be able to move into their orbit correctly? And then are we going to be able to maintain connection with that satellite for its entire life? So, and mobile networks have millions and millions and millions of people on it, so it's very, very cost effective, because everybody that's on a mobile network, obviously there's a pay per use fee. But satellite networks don't have the same volume of users on it. So Iridium, that's been around since '98 and are very successful, and probably the biggest in the mobile communication space, still only has over 2 million users. So it's small in relative terms for the costs involved, and that's where people have a hard time going, why is it so expensive? And it does, to a certain extent, it has come down. Like when I worked with Iridium in '98, their satellite phones were $7,500 a piece. The plans were very complex and over $100 a month and things like that. So we have seen them come down a lot, where you can get a satellite phone now from anywhere from $1,500 to $2,000, and you can get plans from $50-$55 a month. So it has come down a lot, but it's not going to come down to anywhere near your mobile phone costs, because it's just a totally different scale of costs.
Yeah. Well, I mean, when mobile phones first came out, the plans and the call costs and that sort of thing, that was exorbitant back then. I can remember my first mobile phone. I used to use it just simply so I could receive calls. If I needed to make a call, I would drive until I found a public telephone box and pull over and make the phone call out of the telephone box, instead of paying however many cents. I think it was 40 cents a minute, or 40 cents for 30 seconds or part thereof, or something like that, on the mobile phone. So yeah, nowadays you wouldn't. All my kids have got them, ever since they were, I think, 12 years old was when we agreed we'd let them have their mobile phone. But you see kids much younger than that with mobile phones nowadays. So, yeah, and it's just going to be one of those things that the more people that come on board, the more, cost effective it's going to be, and so forth. It's on a sliding scale.
Yep. And, a lot of it is also affected by the exchange rate. So
Mm.
most of the satellite networks, all the costs come out of the US. So all their costing is based in US dollars. So what also fluctuates the Australian market and in a lot of other countries is our exchange rate with the US dollar. So, something that from a beam perspective, we watch every day what the exchange rates are because it really affects us because we sell a lot internationally. Um, and yeah, at the moment we're, for example, sitting at about 65. I can tell you, I've seen it go as high as $1.05, which obviously brought prices down, but I've also seen it down at 51, which, will put, 20-25% on all the costs. So that's where you do get a bit of fluctuation in the market where, prices do change and they can change upwards or they can change downwards. And it's all based on the fact that it's all comes out of America and US dollars. So when we bring them into Australia, it's all based on the exchange rate for that particular time. So that's another factor in the cost scenario of satellite technologies.
Yeah, yeah. All right. So a backcountry hunter contacts the Satphone Shop and says, I'm just getting into backpack hunting. I might be doing 1 or 2 trips a year. What sort of equipment would you recommend for me to look at purchasing um, to keep myself safe and communicate with friends and family?
Okay. Typically, we'd start the questioning routine. So, what is it that you want to get out of it? So, you mentioned you do want to keep in contact with family and friends. So, if you didn't want to have contact, then, we'd be looking possibly at a PLB. But if you want to keep in touch with family and friends, then we'd ask a lot more questions in regards that, try to determine, is a satellite messaging device going to suit you best? Or do you want that ability to be able to make a phone call? And, looking at the other features of either of the products, like, do you want that SOS facility in it that, if something goes pear-shaped, you just have to press a button and then not have to worry about anything else? Does your family or your wife or whatever want to be able to see where you are all the time? So as you're traveling, through your hunting trip, that they can get, a regular update with a map so they can see where you are. So if for whatever reason you just stopped contacting and they weren't able to contact you, at least they would know your last location, that they could instigate some type of, emergency rescue type thing to say, it's been 2 hours, we haven't heard from him. This is his last position because they can see that on the map. So it really comes down to that questioning and what it is that they're really needing and what's going to best suit their budget. Because everybody would love to spend, everything and get the top shelf of everything, but we don't always all have that money. And it's about trying to match the right product to what their needs are.
Mm.
And that's really something that we focus a lot on. So it's talking to our customers and understanding what their needs are is really, really important. And then, we come up with some recommendations. Well, based on what you've said, Tobias, this product or this product would be best suited, and then run through the features and benefits of either those products. And then, one of what tends to be sometimes the more complicated discussion is about the ongoings. So, 99% of all satellite equipment, apart from a PLB or an EPIRB, all has ongoings. And that's, people sometimes are happy to spend the money to buy the equipment, but the problem is the ongoings. And then, based on your, how often you're going to use it. So you're only going to use it 1 or 2 times a year. Again, that will help determine what type of plan or product that we also suggest for you. So it's about really that questioning and coming up with recommendations based on what the customer tells us, that we will then make those recommendations.
Mm. Yep. So a basic sort of kit for someone. Actually, I'll just step back because you mentioned EPIRB then as well. So my understanding is an EPIRB is for marine use and a PLB is more for land-based use. Is that correct?
Absolutely spot on.
Okay. So if somebody was, say somebody was a fisherman as well as a hunter, because a lot of us are, would we buy an EPIRB so that it could be used down in the boat as well as on land, or are they really specific in their use?
Yeah, an EPIRB is much more specific in regards it's designed for maritime, and once you go over a certain size of boat, you're actually by law have to have an EPIRB fitted to the boat. And the main difference with an EPIRB is designed to self-activate. So once it comes in contact with water for a certain amount of time, it will automatically activate and start sending a distress message with the GPS location. A PLB, and we have a lot of out in the tinnies that do four-wheel driving or hunting, where they'll also do a bit of fishing in the tinny or the canoe, and then also do the land stuff as well. A PLB can be used on both. Okay, so you can certainly take your PLB fishing with you. In the event that something goes wrong, you can deploy that. The PLBs are waterproof. But the main difference is the fact that the PLB, you do need to activate it. So it does require manual intervention to activate it.
Yeah.
And a PLB is not self-buoyant. So a PLB won't float on its own. So you'd have to hold it or be able to hold it or place it on something on water so it can remain in contact. Because obviously if it goes below the surface, satellite signal can't penetrate the water. Right. So that's the real difference, is once you go over, I'm not 100% sure on the exact size of the boat, but it's a fairly decent sized boat that then you are by law required to have an EPIRB. So the EPIRBs are, self-buoyant and self-activating. So, if your boat all of a sudden sinks, you don't have to worry about it. The the EPIRB will automatically activate and will float on the surface and remain upright to be able to talk to the satellites to get that emergency message out. Yeah. Whereas the PLB is manually, you need to deploy an antenna, push a button, and then either hold it or whatever, but you can certainly use PLB on both, and they're certainly waterproof.
Yeah, okay. So then a basic user, would it be valuable for them to have a PLB and a satellite messenger as part of their kit, their standard kit?
It is, and we do have customers that buy both, because, it's all about, redundancy, having a backup. No different to before we started this podcast. You're obviously recording it, and we're also recording it as a backup on Teams in case something goes wrong. Yeah. There's no difference with that satellite, and the having both just gives you that extra peace of mind that, if you're in an area and you don't have direct line of sight to the satellite, by activating a PLB as well, just gives you more assurity that something's going to get through to get your emergency out. Yeah. We do have customers that do it. I think it's certainly nice to have both, but I think what we really focus on is at least to have one. Because there's a lot of people. We talk to them at the shows and everything like that, and people just go out there and think that, oh, well, my mobile phone will work, because it's 99% of population, it's going to work everywhere. But, our big thing is, yes, your Vodas, your Optus and your Telstras are 98, 99% of population. Keyword there is population. Yep. In actual land mass, nearly 80% of Australia's land mass has nothing. Yep. And that's really, where people get stuck, and they go out there with their mobiles, and unfortunately we see it every year with tourists and things like that go out back, and you don't even have to go out Birdsville or out back in the middle of nowhere. I've travelled, I did a trip from Darwin through to Broome via the Gibb River Road last year, and even some of your major regional towns, you only have to go 5-10 clicks out of them and you've got nothing. Because it's all about the mobile carriers only want to put their network where there's people. That's right. If there's nobody living there, they're not going to put a tower there because it's way too expensive for them. Yeah. So it's about really educating people that you've got to go out with something. You cannot rely on your mobile phone. Okay. It's not going to save you when something goes wrong.
Yeah. So coming back to the mobile phones then, I see that iPhone have released a new function on their iPhone 15s and above, I think it is, an SOS function. Do you know much about
Right.
that?
Yeah, so Apple did it, I think it's just nearly 2 years ago now, launched the SOS facility on their iPhone. I think it's 14 and above.
Okay.
So as long as you have an iPhone 14 and above, you'll have a facility to do an SOS, and that's via satellite. And the satellite network it connects to is the Global Star network. So Apple did a joint agreement with Global Star to use or have access to their network. And I think the best thing that I could say is I encourage if people are going to have that as their fallback, if something goes pear-shaped, is to do some research and have a look at what some of the experts say. It's very, very hit and miss. The Global Star network isn't at the same capacity. Global Star was originally designed for 36 satellites. I think they're down to about 24 operational ones now. They still have some major financial issues. You can't buy a Global Star phone anymore. You can't. Pivotel that used to operate Global Star from a telephony point of view doesn't support phone calls on the Global Star network anymore. So I know there's many spot users out there that also use the Global Star, which is a messaging device, but trying to get your smartphone to connect to a satellite, when you look at how big satellite phones are and their antennas and everything, is a mean feat. It's not to say it'll never work. It obviously, there's lots of examples where it has worked, but it's extremely unreliable. And if you go through the screens, it's about loading up the SOS. You've got to be able to walk around in different orientations to try and connect to a satellite. You've got to hope to find one. If you can find one, then you may get your message out. But it's certainly something that, I use Android. I don't use an Apple, but, my wife uses Apple. And, in my own personal experience, I would never count on Apple SOS as my emergency backup if I'm traveling around Australia outside, mobile phone coverage. And there's Inmarsat. Iridium did a agreement with Qualcomm about a year and a half ago, where they did an agreement and did a test and proved from a Apple or Android, well, I think it was Android at that stage, because it's obviously Qualcomm, which is Android's based, and did a message via the Iridium network on Qualcomm. And Qualcomm was then going to pass that technology through to its the manufacturers like Samsung and everything. Unfortunately, none of the mobile phone manufacturers were interested in it. And in November of last year, Qualcomm actually cancelled that contract with Iridium. So from Iridium's perspective, that sort of put a dent in their direct-to-device from a mobile phone. There was a similar product launched via, it's not Motorola, it's the, I forget the name of it, also launched last year, a version through the Inmarsat network. And as of January just this year, they've gone into receivership. So there's a lot of talk about direct-to-device, and it's something that may happen down the track. But at this stage, it does have some technology barriers to get over, to get that ability for a smartphone to be able to connect to a satellite so far away. And I know Starlink did a test in February and they were able to connect, but that was, they've still got a lot of regulatory issues to get around that, and they had to launch 6 specific satellites to be able to do that. So at the moment, that trial is finished, and if Starlink want to go down that road, they've got to then go through that whole exercise of, redoing all their 5,000 satellites with this other satellite that then supports the technology to be able to do direct-to-device. So maybe something down the track, but at this stage, it's certainly not something that we would recommend to have as your only backup.
Yeah, okay. One of the other things about mobile phones as well that you said to me, one of our earlier conversations, the GPS function on mobile phones is not actually based on the GPS satellites. So the mapping applications and so forth that we have on our phone, are they they're not relying on the satellite network, from my understanding.
Correct. So basically, your mobile phones, and this is something that I learned from HEMA at the last caravan and camping show. They were doing quite a few presentations, and obviously HEMA does a lot in the mapping for remote parts of Australia, tracks and things like that. And that's where, if you rely on Google Maps, a lot of people get stuck going what they think is a road that isn't a road. It's actually a walking track.
Yeah.
So your mobile phones, because of their limited amount of power, use the mobile network for their GPS coordinates. So they actually don't use the GPS network. If you don't have access to any mobile and you open up for GPS, then they will use the actual GPS satellites. But as long as they've got access to the mobile network, they'll actually just use the mobile network to also then give you a GPS coordinate. And that's where, if you see a lot of mapping applications or whatever, where people are following roads or whatever, all of a sudden they'll cut across through buildings and all sorts of things, because again, it's just using the mobile network. And that's where you can have a lot of people will drive to a certain spot, park their cars and then walk. But if they've still got mobile phone coverage, then Google thinks, oh, they're still driving there. So then you go along and drive, and all of a sudden you're stuck because it's not actually a driving trail, it's only a walking trail. And that's one of the big things that obviously HEMA push on their mapping application, is it's all based on real GPS. And they actually go out there using their equipment on a actual GPS network and actually travel all around Australia, all parts of the tracks, and actually find these tracks and map them according to their, how good they are, sealed, unsealed, four-wheel drive only, or you got to be crazy if you want to try this one. And that's the thing that people can get really stuck on. That I didn't know. I always thought, GPS, it's using the GPS network satellites, but no, it's only using your mobile network.
Yeah, I use Gaia Maps application, and I think I read on their website, one of the things they recommend is, if you're going to use it, to put your phone into airplane mode, so that you're not relying on the and that's obviously why.
So it doesn't use the mobile network. It'll actually then connect to the GPS satellites, but it will burn your battery much faster.
So the satellite messengers, obviously there's two, I'm going to say two, probably maybe three main players in the market space at the moment. The Garmin, the InReach, the Zoleo, and Bivy seem to be the more popular ones. I know Spot have one as well, but I don't see a lot of it being used. In fact, I haven't seen anybody using a Spot. So you guys are using the Zoleo, or promoting that. Are you able to talk about what the differences are between the Garmin and the Zoleo and the Bivy, or maybe some of the advantages of Zoleo over some of the other platforms?
I think generally they're all pretty close to each other, quite frankly. Obviously, as you mentioned before, DeLorme was the first one to come out with a handheld messaging device, and Garmin very quickly snabbled them up and integrated the DeLorme InReach into their GPS devices and the new Garmin Messenger. Bivy came about from a third party that also saw an opportunity in the satellite messaging market. And one of the largest manufacturers of PLBs and EPIRBs in the world out of the US is a company called ACR. And ACR, I think, very smartly saw that their satellite messengers were potentially eroding their market because, rather than a PLB, because their cost, sometimes a PLB can be more expensive than a messenger. And you can also message people, et cetera, et cetera. So ACR actually bought out Bivy. So ACR own Bivy and have added that into their range. So not only do they do the PLBs and the EPIRBs, but they now also have their own messenger product in the marketplace. So most of them nowadays are pretty similar. I think under the Garmin InReach was a little bit different when they first launched, in regards that it was really a satellite-only type device. And what I mean by that is, when Zoleo was launched, they really saw an opportunity to integrate Zoleo into an app on your smartphone, and then allow you to have the one number that, regardless whether you're on satellite, Wi-Fi or mobile, people could still contact you.
Okay.
So, for example, the traditional Garmin InReach, if you were in satellite, people could obviously message you. You could message them back, no problem at all. But if you're in town, so you've been out hunting and you're going back into town for some supplies, and somebody messages you, you didn't get that message. So it could be, till you go back out, switch it back on or whatever. With the Zoleo, because it runs off the app on your smartphone, when you're in town and somebody messages you, then the Zoleo app will just always use what they call least cost routing.
Right.
So that'll just bring that message via mobile or Wi-Fi, whatever your mobile phone has access to. So when Zoleo launched, Zoleo had a big advantage in the market there for about 12 months, where it was the only one that gave you that, least cost routing over several networks. Obviously, Garmin was responded to that now in the Messenger, the Garmin Messenger, which is a smaller device that also uses an app on your smartphone, and then also does that same least cost routing. Bivy obviously do the same as well. So all three now give you that least cost routing. All of them give you a mobile number, so it's very simple for people to message you. I think it just comes down to personal differences. So their cost is different. Zoleo sells typically for around about the 350. The Garmin Messenger is more around about your, depending if somebody's got it on special, anywhere from 450 to 500. And Bivy's also at the 400 to 450 mark, depending, obviously people have it on special and everything like that. So, but they're typically, I think, the MSRP prices. So there is a slight price difference. Certainly Zoleo is the cheapest on the market. And then it just comes down to what functions do you actually really want and how you want to use it. I think Garmin, from an interaction with your, Garmin, when you build it into their GPS ones, so you've got a full-blown GPS and also your satellite messenger. If you're doing, some very, very complex, trekking into the bush and things like that, and you want to be able to upload maps and set your waypoints and everything like that, then you would certainly lean towards a Garmin device. If it's more just about your messaging and things like that, and having your SOS facility, then you may look at Zoleo or the Bivy. But yeah, I think it's, there's not a lot of difference in them. I think it just comes down to the plan. There's a couple of dollars difference depending on the plans between all three of them. We do also sell the Garmin Messenger. So, we do sell those to people as well. That, obviously Garmin's got a great brand, well-respected brand. Zoleo's been around for 3 years now, so I think that's getting a lot more traction in the marketplace. So it's really just about, again, not to sort of cop out on you, but it's about what you want to use and how you want to use it as to far as which one's going to best suit your needs. But I think, any one of the messengers would certainly see you well in having something to be able to. All three also have your SOS device inbuilt to it as well.
Yeah.
So, they've also got that backup. So it just comes down to, purchase price, the plans, activation fees, warranty on them. How long's the warranty on each of them? I know Garmin and Bivy have a 12-month warranty. Zoleo has a 2-year warranty. So, all these sorts of little differences. And, you obviously have a lot of brand loyalty as well. So some people be very loyal to Garmin and, I want a Garmin device. Whereas the newer players like Zoleo and Bivy don't necessarily have a lot of brand, but, we'll go by, a lot of the reviews and things like that. And, Zoleo's won many, many reviews over the journey in their short time over the Garmin. So it's about just doing your research on which one's going to best suit your needs.
Yeah. When I bought my, I've got an InReach not the Mini 2, the first one they came out with.
Yeah.
Because that was the one that was out when I bought mine. So I don't think the Zoleo was actually around then, or it might have only just been released. But one of the advantages that I saw in the Garmin product was the screen, having the screen and being able to text direct from the device and not having to rely upon the link to your smartphone. So that in the event that, again, contingency, if something happened to your phone and you couldn't use it, then at least you could text from the device. And it's extremely painful. I've done it. It's like the old, you've got the keyboard, you've got to move the cursor along and then down and, that sort of thing. So they're very, very short messages, but that's sort of one of the reasons, I guess, that sort of I lent towards that device. But the Zoleo and the Garmin Messenger that you're talking about, they're both sort of on the same par, where you are reliant on that link to your smartphone, with the exception of the SOS. But I believe with the Zoleo, you can pre-program some messages to send direct from the device. So if that link to your smartphone did break, you've still got that function.
With the Zoleo, you can obviously, without your mobile phone, you can obviously activate the SOS, and you can send what they call an I'm okay message. So when you set up your Zoleo, you can have up to 5 contacts. And, if you just press the I'm okay button on the Zoleo device, it will just send an I'm okay message along with your GPS location to all of your 5 contacts. So even if you're, don't have access to your smartphone's dead, or even if you're just hiking and you don't want to pull your smartphone out, but, middle of the day as you're hiking along or you're hunting, whatever the case may be, you can just press that button, and again, it'll just send your location and an I'm okay message to all of your contacts. And you can do that as many times as you like. That doesn't count as part of your pool. But apart from that, there's no other pre-programmed messages that you can send. Any other messages would have to be reliant on having access to your smartphone and the app to be able to use the keypad to send a message.
Yeah. And they're both, the Zoleo and the Garmin, both able to get weather reports, I see as well. So, yeah, they're like you say, there doesn't seem to be a great deal of difference between them. But one of the things I have heard from quite a few people, actually, about the Garmin, which I haven't heard about the Zoleo, is I guess what you'd call text misalignment. So what people will report is they will send a text message from their device and it won't go all the way through to the other person. So then they will send a message and then receive your message, and then they'll respond to that. And so then you end up with this disjointed sort of text conversation where people aren't responding to the message that you've actually sent, and so creates a bit of confusion. So I like I said, I've heard people on social media and so forth talk about that a couple of times. So I don't know whether that's something that Garmin have fixed recently or addressed or whatever, but that is one thing I haven't heard people say about the Zoleo. In fact, I've actually heard people say that the Zoleo, the response time for the text messages and so forth actually seems to be quite quick. Not instant, but definitely a lot quicker. So therefore, there isn't that. There doesn't seem to be that confusion creating sort of events.
Yeah, I think when you're just looking at Zoleo and Garmin, I think one of the major differences that we do talk to our customers about is when you activate your Zoleo, you'll get a mobile number, and that number will stay with you for as long as you have your service active. And you can even, all the messengers you can suspend as well when you're not using them, which is a great advantage, particularly if you only go hunting 2 or 3 times a year. You don't want to be paying a monthly fee when you're not hunting. So they all have the ability to be suspended for, like $4 or $5 a month. So, less than a cup of coffee. But when you activate your Zoleo, you get a mobile number. So it'll be a standard 04 Australian mobile number. So you don't even need to tell people it's your Zoleo number. You can just say, this is my number when I travel. Mm-hmm. Okay. Now, the Garmin works differently in regards to that they basically recycle their mobile numbers. So with Zoleo, you get a mobile number and you can tell anybody that mobile number and they can message you anytime. With Garmin, when you're out there with Garmin, you actually basically have to message somebody first, and then they reply to that message. So if they want to get in contact with you because they know you're out hunting, but you haven't sent them a message, they can't actually get in contact with you. So Garmin requires that you to set that link first by messaging them, and then anybody that email trail or message trail can go on for as long as you want. That's because that link has been established between your Garmin device and their mobile number. But if you don't message them first, they can't message you. So that's a bit of a limitation with how Garmin recycle their mobile numbers. So you don't actually get a mobile number that's permanently attached to your Garmin device, whereas Zoleo, it does. Mm. And, that's where a lot of people really like the Zoleo because they become attached to their mobile numbers. They don't like being changed. We have a lot of businesses and corporates that use the Zoleo and they want to have a dedicated mobile number for their customers to be able to contact. People, more and more people are travelling around Australia, working from home, working while they're travelling, etc. So having a permanent number is very appealing to them. So that's one of the big differences as well.
Yeah, and I will say that is an annoying feature with the Garmin that I've experienced, is that I have to message everybody before I go on a trip to say this is how you connect with me, while I'm away, because it doesn't allow that sort of other party initiation for the message. So. That is an interesting and I think very considerable feature of the Zoleo. Now, battery life and power options as well for when you're out and about. So, a lot of stuff nowadays, in fact, pretty much everything has rechargeable internal batteries for them. So, how long would you expect, and I know that this is all usage reliant, but how long would you sort of expect a battery to last in the backcountry, and what are the recharging options?
Yep. All the devices have their different standby times depending on or their usage times depending on the size of their battery and obviously the power that they use. For example, Zoleo has 200 hours, and that's 200 hours sending a message every 15 minutes. Okay. So that's not just on, that's actually using it every 15 minutes. So that's a genuine, real use case. So if you were using the tracking facility or pressing, if you were just walking, you wouldn't press the I'm okay every 15 minutes because you can't walk that far. But yeah, so that's 200 hours, which is what, 7 days, 8 days of power. So it does, and Garmin, I think the InReach, I think, is a little bit less, but the new Messenger actually goes even longer than the 200 hours. And I'm not quite sure on what the Bivy is. I think the Bivy is a bit less out of the three in regards to their operating time. But they're all basically USB rechargeable, so they're all just require a 5 volt. So what we recommend is, we have some power banks as well, anything from 5,000 milliamps, 10 and 20,000. A 5,000 milliamp battery will basically totally recharge your Zoleo. So you go from 200 hours to 400 hours. So that, you're talking nearly 2 weeks that you can be out there by just when your Zoleo goes flat, by just having a power bank. If you wanted something a bit more universal or something, we also have portable solar panels, and we're talking small little ones that, that fold up that you can hang off your backpack. So whilst you're walking, and if you're getting any sort of sun, you can just have that connected to the Zoleo or any USB. So it could be your handheld GPS, could be your mobile phone, any sort of small USB chargeable device. So, we've got a small little 4-volt solar panel with 6 watt.
Yep.
Now that'll charge a Zoleo in around about 6 hours in full sunlight. So one day of hiking or just having it in the sun whilst you're set up at your camp or whatever will recharge a Zoleo. A smartphone will probably take about 7 hours, or you can jump up to an 11 watt, which is just a bifold, which is basically about the size of an A4 piece of paper once it's folded out. That'll do a Zoleo in 3 to 4 hours, or a smartphone, depending on its size, in 4 to 5 hours. So, depending on what option is best for you. A power bank, obviously, once it's flat, you can't, that's now dead, and you've got that extra weight and size that you've still got to carry with you. A solar panel is, like all, being environmentally friendly, and all the solar panels that we're putting on our houses or whatever, it's a never-ending power source. So, we're seeing a lot more people nowadays opting for a solar panel because, they're very efficient. They're still reasonably lightweight. They are a little bit bigger in their footprint, but very easy just because they're quite thin to slide into the backpack. And, even when you're walking, you can, they'll have the little carabiners on them. You can hang them off the backpack, and you can be charging while you're walking through the bush. Sometimes it's not going to have sun, sometimes it is, and it's just going to continually drip power your small device, whether that's a Zoleo, a Garmin, phone, or your handheld GPS, whatever the case may be.
Yeah. One of the issues with power banks, you're probably aware, it's cold weather just drains the power banks for whatever reason. Batteries in general, they just don't last in cold weather. You'll often see videographers on backcountry hunts, and they've got GoPro and camera battery shoved inside their jacket, to try and keep them warm so they don't get drained and so forth. So that sort of debate is whether you carry the weight of the power bank and try and maintain it somehow, or you use a solar panel. Either way, that's there's pluses and minuses. So I guess, like you say, that's just, you could carry both. And have the solar panel charge the power bank, and then try and maintain it and charge everything from there. When that fails, then you've got the solar panel there as a direct power source for it. So I guess it comes down to everybody's budget and what they're prepared to carry.
Yeah. And obviously it's particularly important for the hunting fraternity. You've got a limited amount of equipment that you can carry, so weight and size become very, very important decisions in regards to what you can and cannot take, as opposed to somebody in a four-wheel drive that has a lot more availability in regards to size and weight. But it is a real issue, and it's across the board, because everything nowadays is lithium-ion batteries, even right up to your Tesla vehicles or whatever. And lithium ion is a very, very efficient new technology of batteries that are much better than your traditional old lead acid. You can use a lot more of the 100% of the battery capacity, whereas lead acids you can only use up to 60 or 70% of the available power, and then you can't get access to any more. But lithium ion, its downside is both in cold and heat. So not only cold affects it, but also heat. So once you start getting over 35 degrees Celsius, I've had many instances over summer in, even in Victoria, which, we don't have the same sort of heat as you do, say, up in Queensland. But all of a sudden, my phone will go into emergency mode and basically shut down. My watch just over the weekend, for whatever reason, got too hot and went into emergency mode and shut down. So, that is also a real issue, that, heat can, and, it's not only your messaging device, your smartphone, your satellite phone, your GPS battery, everything like that, either too hot or too cold. So that's where you need to be careful in regards to how you carry it. If it's cold, you obviously want to keep it close to your body, try to keep it warm as possible. And if it's hot, you want it somewhere where you can try to keep it as cool as possible. So, that is another challenge for all of our technology is keeping it in that right temperature range. So we've always got access to it as well.
Yeah. Yeah, great. All right. So, what do you see? What's the future for the communication industry? Where do you see we're going to be in the next 5 to 10 years? What are some things to look
Well,
forward to? Are there any sort of industry rumours or whispers going on that you can share?
um, I think from a phone perspective, you're not going to see a lot of change. With our smartphones, we see Samsung and Apple, they're the two biggest. They release new models every year. In the satellite space, one of the newest ones is the Satphone 2. That's been out for about 7 years. The 9555 from Iridium has been out for over 10 years. So we don't also see that model refresh anywhere near like what we do with our smartphones. So from a satellite phone perspective, I know Iridium, their last update was, a new satellite handset's probably at least 2 years away, if not greater. Again, because of the whole economy of scales, they don't sell millions of handsets. To develop and build a piece of satellite equipment takes, many, many millions of dollars. So obviously they have to wait a long time to get the return on the investment on that. So I think you'll see most of, in the next 5 to 10 years, I think most of the excitement or discussion is around about direct to device. So who's going to be the first to actually get over that barrier of having a smartphone, being able to effectively and reliably talk to a satellite network?
Okay.
I think from a data perspective, you'll see, obviously a lot of growth in Starlink and the features in that. But that's more from I want to be able to surf the internet. I want to be able to watch my Netflix and everything like that. You'll see new players like OneWeb will start to get traction in that space as well. But in the comm space, I still see PLBs and EPIRBs aren't going to change all that much. So they'll still have their spot in the marketplace. I haven't heard anything from Inmarsat or in regards to a new handset. So I think most of it's really going to be about who's going to be the first to really get that ability for a smartphone to connect to the satellite network reliably. And then the biggest challenge out of that, even once they do that, and even though Apple have it today in, not extremely reliable, but when Apple launched, they were very nice to say, okay, for the first 2 years, it'll be free. It's been pretty close to nearly 2 years now, and they still don't charge for it. Right. And one of the biggest problems that, the average punter doesn't realize is Apple make that facility on the Globalstar network. Now, Globalstar one day, a satellite network's a finite resource. So whenever you touch a satellite network, the satellite carriers, I want some money for that. I need some, 20 cents, 50 cents for that or whatever. Yeah. And the biggest problem is when you've got Apple that have that facility and you've got your phone with Telstra, is how do they actually bill that? And that's the big challenge between the mobile manufacturers and the satellite networks, is how do they then recoup it? And one of the challenges when Qualcomm sold or did the contract with Iridium was we were all asking, well, how are you going to bill it? And nobody knows how to bill it. And as much as billing shouldn't be an issue, it is actually a real issue today in regards that if Samsung have that facility to be able to use their phone on the Iridium network, Iridium want money for it. But that technology or that availability is done through Samsung, not the individual carriers. So then how does Iridium then bill the individual carrier or know who the user is to get their money for that person using the network? So that's, apart from the technology in the smartphone to be able to connect to the satellite network, that's actually the other major hurdle for them to come over. But, I think they will definitely get there. Absolutely.
Yep.
How long it takes them, that'll be the question mark, whether it's 2 years, 5 years, or possibly more. But yeah, it will definitely come through at some point in time. But that's not only from a hardware technology, but also from a billing perspective is how do they make that happen? Because none of the satellite carriers are going to have that available for free for mobile users.
Yeah.
They will want revenue for it.
Yeah. 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 Okay. All right, Reiny, I appreciate your time and certainly imparted a lot of information on us. And I think the big takeaway though is that the system that people are going to use really is going to be individually case dependent. So the best thing to do is to do their own research and reach out and have a conversation with someone at the Satphone Shop on what's going to meet their needs and go from there.
Absolutely. And, we're very, very happy. And, our average time is, at least half hour to 45 minutes that we spend with customers on an initial call by going through that questioning. And, we've really built our business over that 11 years in really taking the time, being specialised in the satellite space. Where Satphone Shop operate out of is the same headquarters as Beam Communications here in Melbourne. So, some of the curlier questions, we have direct access to all of our hardware and software engineers. We also have a dedicated showroom for those people that are around Melbourne, which is something quite rare in the satellite space. Most of it's all just done online or whatever. So to be able to actually come into a showroom and actually view all the products, not only all the satellite phones, but all the other ancillary accessories that we sell as well, have the whole range of products there to view. I know, we have people drive, 2-3 hours around Victoria to come to our showroom because they can view everything. They can talk to a real person. We can go out in the car park. We can do a test call, see what it's like. And help them set up their phone and everything like that for them. So, it's about doing your research, asking questions, and getting the right advice. And definitely the way to go. And the most important thing is don't leave home without one, whether it's a PLB, a messenger, or a satellite phone. It's just there's too much of Australia out there, and we never think something's going to go wrong, but we all have car insurance, we all insure our homes, we insure our lives, and yet too many times people go out there and there's just too many things that can go wrong, whether you're a four-wheel driver or a hunter, and you need that ability to be able to have a device and get a message back as far as where you are and you need help. And that's the most important thing. And whether you get it from Satphone Shop or you get it from somebody else, but just make sure you don't leave home without one.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, it is just a form of insurance, really, isn't it? And it makes sense, especially when we've got loved ones back at home waiting for us and hoping that we come back. So there is an inherent risk in some of the things we do. There's an inherent risk in everyday life. I realise that, but it does the risk does increase a little bit with some of the adventures that we go on. Whereabouts is your shop?
So it's based out in Mulgrave, which is about 40 minutes out from the CBD here in Melbourne. And it's open Monday to Friday, 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. And obviously we have an online website, so all of our products and all of our satellite equipment is available there. We also have a 1300 number, so you can obviously call us during office hours. And there's also a chat facility there as well. So we see more and more people really like the chat because they can obviously be doing something else and ask their questions on chat. And then there's obviously email, sales at Satphone Shop. They can drop us an email, and so we're very, very contactable. And we ship anywhere in Australia. So we've been around long enough. So whether it's dropping off at a post office, we do deliveries to caravan parks for people on their trips halfway through. So we're very experienced in being able to get it to you. But not only buying, but obviously we do the rentals as well. So, if you're not ready to make a purchase, then, a great way is to try before you buy and renting a satellite phone. Unfortunately, we don't rent the messengers because they're obviously much lower cost, so there's not much value in renting those. But, if you are looking for a satellite phone, renting is always a good option as well. So you can try it for your 10-day hunting trip or 1 week hunting trip or whatever, and just try it. See how you find it. See that it's actually as reliable as what we say it is, and all that before you buy. So that's always a good option as well.
Yeah. Okay. Well, that's good to know too. All right. Well, yeah. Look, I'll put some links to the website and social media and so forth in the show notes for the podcast. And obviously, people, as you say, are very welcome to reach out and talk to you. Some of the other staff there. So, Look. Again, Reiny, I really appreciate your time. I know you're a busy man, so well, I hope. Are you going to the Shot Expo in October? Are you going to be there in person?
Yep, I will certainly be there.
All right. Well, look, I'm really hoping to get there myself. So hopefully I'll be able to meet in person.
Yep, that would be great, Tobias. Catch up.
All right. Thanks, Reiny.
Thank you. Thanks to all your listeners.
Hey, thank you for listening in. If you'd like to contact me for a chat, pass on any feedback, or have some ideas for future podcasts, please reach out to me on Instagram at Australian_hunting_backcountry or email australian.hunting.backcountry@outlook.com.au. For now though, please look after yourselves and your mates.